Seed of Chucky is a direct sequel to Bride of Chucky, following up on the explosive birth of Chucky and Tiffany's baby seen at the end of that movie. Like Bride, Seed would continue the trend of metacinema, drawing our attention to horror movie tropes and not being so subtle about its influences. Last episode when I talked about Bride, I mentioned that this new direction for the franchise was a direct result of the Scream movies, having a huge impact on our culture.
For God's sake, Chucky, drag yourself into the 90s.
Right down to the new Chucky logo containing a spike, much like the letter M in the Scream logo. The new logo for Seed, which would be used going forward, is slightly changed. This time the Y is the pointy letter, making it look even more like the Scream logo. The opening scene pays homage to Chucky's slasher forefather, Halloween, by showing the scene through the point of view of the antagonist, just like Halloween's opening. But having a clear dependence on Halloween, in a way, is also another example of how Chucky was influenced by Scream, because if you remember in the original Scream, the movie that they all watch at Stu's party is Halloween, and many of Halloween's tropes come up during the events of that party.
Dude, look behind you. Look behind you. Turn around. Behind you. Behind you!
Bride was very much galvanized by Scream 1 and 2, but since then, a third Scream movie was released, and Seed of Chucky would look to it for further inspiration. To learn how Seed of Chucky was a mashup of several horror concepts, stick around to the end of this video. This video is sponsored by Keeps. Welcome to Things You Missed. Seed of Chucky tells the story of the indecisive intersex interloper known as Glenn or Glenda. It's not really clear which is accurate by the end of the movie, so I'll just go with whatever seems appropriate at the time. The entire plot is set into action when Glenn sees the Made in Japan marking on his wrist that matches the mark that he sees on Chucky's wrist when the doll appears on TV to promote the movie that's being made about it.
Thank you very much.
I'm no orphan after all!
Which is just wrong. It doesn't make sense that Chucky would have a Made in Japan mark because we clearly see the doll was created in a factory in Chicago during Child's Play 2. And Charles Lee Ray himself was born in Hackensack, New Jersey, as was Glenn, who was live born in the cemetery at the end of Bride. That's not gonna be my only accuracy gripe, but let's get into the things you missed. After the opening dream scene, we find ourselves in a graveyard where Santa Claus, or someone posing as him, discovers that he's giving Chucky and Tiffany a ride in his sack of toys. When Chucky comes face to face with the big man, he makes this discovery.
I knew it! You're not real.
This is an ironic thing to say because throughout Chucky's entire existence as a doll, he's only able to get away with the things that he does because nobody believes that he's real. The majority of the public just thinks he's a regular doll. This whole scene ends up being part of the production of a movie within the movie. They have to stop filming due to some technical difficulties in the special effects department.
Chucky's broke again! This is bloody ridiculous!
This is a little nod to what famously went on behind the scenes of the production of the 1975 horror film Jaws, where the titular shark was an animatronic that was constantly breaking down and messing up the shooting schedule.
You could hear this.
The shark is not working. Repeat. The shark is not working.
The concept of a Chucky movie being made within another Chucky movie heavily derives from Scream 3. In each of the Scream sequels so far, Hollywood makes a movie adaptation based on the events of one of the previous movies, which is referred to in-universe as the Stab franchise. Scream 3 features actor counterparts of each major character, and Seed of Chucky goes one step further by casting Jennifer Tilly, who played Tiffany in Bride, to play herself, Jennifer Tilly, who is also playing the adaptation version of Tiffany in the movie within the movie. Seed of Chucky must take place in a world not too different from our own, because Jennifer mentions that she thinks she should have played Erin Brockovich, which her rival Julia Roberts won the Academy Award for Best Actress for in 2001.
And the Oscar goes to Julia Roberts.
She also makes reference several times to her own Oscar nomination in the 1994 film Bullets Over Broadway. Additionally, the Variety newspaper that she reads features real articles from the world of entertainment in 2004, and we see a magazine later on mentioning the 2004 Spanish horror film Rojo Sangre. Scream 3 came out in 2000 and loved to parody real-life stuff from Hollywood. But there's another horror movie that played even more of a role in influencing Seed, and we can find it when we look to the title of the Chucky movie that's being shot in that second sequence.
We're here in Hollywood, where production is underway on the new horror flick Chucky Goes Psycho.
The movie they're making is called Chucky Goes Psycho, and this movie, Seed of Chucky, could be described as Chucky Goes Psycho. That is, the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock movie, Psycho. In fact, the opening dream scene that I mentioned earlier features a woman getting stabbed in the shower and pulling the shower curtain down as she falls, just like the famous shower scene in Psycho that I think I've mentioned about 100 times on Things You Missed now. There's also the fact that the ventriloquist act that Glenn is a part of in the beginning is put on by a guy named Sykes. For this next one, I've got to spoil the end of Psycho. It's one of the all-time great endings, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out first. If you have seen it, you already know that the motel operator, Norman Bates, has dissociative identity disorder, a mental condition causing a person to have multiple identities and sets of behavior that they switch between at various times. In Psycho, Norman switches between himself and his mother, Norma Bates, causing him to sometimes act as a hospitable civil male and sometimes as an evil, homicidal female. Chucky's offspring has a similar disorder. When Chucky and Tiffany first meet the kid, they're unable to determine the gender. Chucky names him Glenn and treats him as a male who isn't comfortable with any of the killing going on around him. But later in the story, he switches to female and assumes the name Glenda, which was given to him by Tiffany, and the female identity turns out to be a psychotic killing machine.
Glenn, he's an angel, an absolute dream. But Glenda, she's a bad girl, Miss Tilly. A very bad girl.
When assuming the Glenda identity, the child even dresses up in a white dress, just as Norman dresses up in his mother's robes. The seemingly endless waterfall of references does not end there though, and we still haven't even talked about this book and the rest of the things you missed. In Bride of Chucky, we saw Tiffany trying to rebuild Chucky using the shredded pieces of his body, and that involved her just stapling the hair back onto his head. I'm here to tell you that there is a better way. 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35, and the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. That's where Keeps comes in. Keeps is a service that aims to make it easier and more affordable for men to keep their hair. That's why it's called Keeps. You see how much you're learning already? Everything is done online. A licensed doctor will review your information, recommend the right treatment for you, and have the goods shipped directly to your door. By prescribing generic versions of FDA-approved medications for hair loss, Keeps is more affordable. Plus, you can track your progress with the Keeps tracking tool and message your doctor 24/7 for questions and updates. Keeps treatments typically take 4 to 6 months to start seeing results, so if you're experiencing hair loss, it's important to get on that ASAP. So here's what you need to do. Go to the link in the description, that's keeps.com/CZ, and you will receive 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/CZ to keep your hair with Keeps. Jennifer Tilly pursues a new acting role as the Virgin Mary, the biblical figure who supposedly magically becomes pregnant. This could be another example of the movie calling attention to the fact that it's a movie, because our story in Seed is also about a Jennifer Tilly character's pregnancy. She takes a meeting with the director Redman, and in his office you see a poster of the movie Scarface, perhaps a reference to the fact that Chucky has stitches on his face during this arc. Or maybe Redman just really likes Al Pacino? After realizing he's Chucky and Tiffany's son, Glenn ships himself to the movie studio in Hollywood, and again, like in Child's Play 3, we have no idea how he accomplished this, because how did he pack and ship himself when he's already inside the box? So let's just look past that. He arrives in a special effects shop and sees other horror icons waiting there, but his interest is in his parents, and he tries one of the Dumbella spells to awaken them. And as you probably know, it works. Which means these dolls that were being used as props in the Chucky Goes Psycho movie were the actual dolls from the crime scene in 1999, because Chucky can't just spawn into any old good guy doll. Not yet anyways. We see the original doll cleaned up and rebuilt in Child's Play 2, then that doll is melted down and the plastic is used to create a new good guy doll in Child's Play 3, then the pieces of that doll are stitched together in Bride, and now it appears that the movie studio somehow ended up with it and turned him into an animatronic. Chucky and Tiffany come up with yet another plan to try to transfer themselves into human bodies, but they also need a baby's body for Glenn to go into. Tiffany doesn't want to volunteer herself though. Roll it.
Well, I'm not getting pregnant again, I'll tell you that much. My mother always told me, once is a blessing, twice is a curse.
I think this may be an intentional foreshadowing, because when the twins eventually do pop out later on, the first one is a boy, who according to the babysitter is an angel, and the second one is a girl, who is described as a very bad girl. So Chucky and Tiffany knock up Jennifer with a turkey baster. If this movie came out today, I'd probably be talking about how it drew influence from Don't Breathe, but I guess it's technically the other way around. I would think that impregnating her with Chucky's seed would cause the children to come out half doll, but I guess not. I'm not gonna dwell on it. Also, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but when Jennifer calls up her assistant, she's writing fake fan mail letters because Jennifer had mentioned earlier that she's basically jealous of the narcissistic pleasures of Hollywood stardom. Meanwhile, Tiffany wants to get rid of her addiction to killing to set a good example for the baby, and this book tells her she needs to make amends with those that she has harmed. We see her dial up a woman that she had widowed in the past.
Hello? Good morning. Is this Ruth Bailey?
Speaking?
The widow of Robert Bailey?
Yes? Who is this?
She's speaking to the wife of the police officer that we saw her kill in the opening scene of Bride. whose full name we later see on a news broadcast to be Robert Bailey. Amazing how they can call back a small detail like that, yet they're unable to remember the entire crux of the movie, the fact that dolls are not able to drive themselves. Kinda makes me crazy, because if it was possible to drive a car with 2 dolls, then Bride doesn't even need to exist.
Sure, I'll steer and you can work the pedals. We're dolls, you dope!
I can't see anything. Maybe we should slow down?
No, you're doing great!
And the book that Tiffany reads on kicking her addictions is just so poorly put together. They have this paragraph on the back, which was clearly just copy pasted from somewhere, and it just cuts off mid-sentence once it's filled up enough space on the cover. And then the page she's reading, which is supposedly page 166, even though it clearly isn't, is the exact same text. We can clearly see that all of the other pages are blank, because the page that she's reading has colored bars on the top, but the other pages in the book just don't have that. This is just sloppy filmmaking. There's also a shot later where Tiffany's just fucking huge, like that one shot of Chucky in the original movie. You may remember one of the gags in Bride of Chucky was that Tiffany was a fan of the Tradwife TV personality Martha Stewart. In Seed, we see a follow-up on that.
It's D-Day here at San Quentin. Who'd have thought it would ever come to this?
They're executing Martha Stewart this morning.
This is a reference to what at the time was a current event, but today may be forgotten. Martha Stewart went to prison in 2004 for investment fraud and lying in court, so this is just kind of a funny escalation of that. At one point, we see a bunch of phone numbers listed on Jennifer's landline. They're all 9-digit numbers as opposed to the usual 10 digits required for a phone number in the US, but the names are what interest me. The first one is Gates, which I imagine is the front gate of the movie studio, and the last one is Joan, the name of her assistant. The others are just first names, but they do all correspond to the names of crew members that worked on the movie. They're all common names, so they might not be crew reference Easter eggs, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume they are. The story winds down after Chucky decides he actually doesn't want to transfer into a human body anymore, despite spending the last 5 movies trying to do so.
I'm one of the most notorious slashers in history, and I don't want to give that up.
Because of Chucky's hesitation, the police are able to save the real Jennifer Tilly and get her to the hospital, where funny enough, nobody believes her story about the dolls being alive. In this sense, she's kind of the spiritual successor to Andy Barclay. And like Andy, she's not in the clear just yet, because at the end of the movie, Chucky shows up and smashes through her door with an axe, a clear reference to Jack Torrance's most famous scene in The Shining.
I can't think of a thing to say.
One of these days, I'll just have to make like a compilation of every The Shining reference I've pointed out in a movie. In the end, Chucky loses his limbs just as he does in each of the original 3 movies and gets his head cut off just like he does in the first one. But this is a clue about the epilogue, because if you've seen that first movie, you know that cutting off Chucky's head isn't enough to finish him. And Glenn would find that out 5 years later. Alright, I've made it through Bride and Seed. I didn't think I could do it. There are a lot of long nights of alcohol and self-mutilation and pouring bleach into my eyes, so if you like these videos, it'd mean a lot if you shared them online. The playlist on the left will eventually contain the next episodes of Chucky Things You Missed, where I'll cover Curse and Beyond, so make sure you don't miss out on any of those by subscribing to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ringing the death bell for all notifications, rip Martha Stewart, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.